Hello and welcome to the episode 36 of the Ego Chall Podcast. Can't believe it's actually been 36 episodes. This is the Ego Chall Podcast, a Call of Duty esports podcast. As always, I am Preston Byers, and I'm joined by Justin Binkowski, my co-host. And today we have a pretty big show. We have week 3 Call of Duty League matches that we have to recap and we have to analyze. We now know what 8 teams will be starting in the winners bracket of the very first major of the new season, and which 4 teams will unfortunately be starting in the losers bracket. We have all of the stats from the qualifiers, the first major qualifiers. We now see what the bracket is going to be like. We might not actually preview the entire major. I think we'll save that for next week, but we'll touch a little bit on it before we get out of here today. We also have a nerf to the Mp40, and that could be pretty interesting for competitive players particularly. And we also have a report that Call of Duty annual releases are not going to be so annual starting next year. So it's going to be a pretty interesting time, and we're going to be talking about a lot of stuff as I just recapped. But how are you doing, Bink?
I'm doing well. Like you said, we got a bit more to talk about than we maybe initially planned before a couple hours ago. But, we got the last week of matches was this past weekend for online qualifiers for Stage 1. We have a off week this week, and then our first official LAN tournament for the pros is the following week, first weekend of March. So got a lot to talk about tonight and ready to hop right in.
Yeah, when we got done with the matches, I think this was late last week, I said that we might have to come up with something to talk about because it really just seemed like, we were going to do the preview show of the bracket the following week because we have the week off and everything. But I guess Call of Duty gods were looking out for us. They wanted us to have some content, and they gave us a lot of content. But let's get through these. Do you want to start at the MW stuff, or do you want to start with the matches?
We can touch it. I don't have too much to say about the report, but we can start with that since it's the freshest news.
Yeah, so this just dropped like a few hours ago, right as we were about to sign off for the day. So yeah, it's pretty interesting news that coming out of Charlie Intel and Bloomberg, both of these so Bloomberg, they have the initial report, I believe, and I'm just gonna read it verbatim. Their report. Activision is working on other projects to fill the gap next year. Wait, is this the right thing I'm supposed to be reading? Oh, no.
I don't know what you're looking at.
Sorry. I was looking at the follow-up tweet. My bad. Activision Blizzard Incorporated will delay a Call of Duty game that had been planned for next year, the first time the franchise will be without an annual mainline release in nearly 2 decades, according to people familiar with the plan. The company is pushing off the release after a recent entry in the series failed to meet expectations. Vanguard, leading some executives to believe that they're introducing new versions too rapidly, said the people, who asked not to be identified because they weren't authorized to discuss the deliberations. The decision was not related to Activision's agreement to sell itself to Microsoft for $69 billion, the people said. So it won't affect this year's release. So the 2022 will probably be October, November. That game will be released as planned according to this report. But in 2023, there will not be a like a Black Ops 5 or whatever, like a new Call of Duty game. We believe that it's going to be developed by Infinity Ward in 2022, right? The next game is going to be Infinity Ward, and then in 2024, reportedly Treyarch would be developing that game. So what is your reaction to it? Obviously, this just happened a few hours ago, and we don't really know all of the details at the moment, but what do you think about this?
Yeah, that's the first thing is obviously this is just the first we're hearing of this, and it's an initial report, so we'll see how things develop. But I think, assuming this is all true, this could be a good thing for COD, and like you were kind of joking about with Vanguard earlier, there are many people in the community who are disappointed in Vanguard, and even before Vanguard releases leading up to that, such as Cold War and Modern Warfare 2019. So it's, in theory, if Treyarch is given potentially more time to develop the 2024 title, that could be a good thing for the game, and it could be an even better product. In my opinion, Treyarch has been the best developer consistently for Call of Duty titles. So, um, giving them even potentially more time to develop a good game could, give us the best COD we've had in recent years. But on the flip side of that, you have to realize that means the game coming out this year in 2022, which is reportedly a sequel to MW 2019, MW2, MW2 Junior, whatever you want to call it, it does put pressure on that game. If there is no follow up to it immediately in 2023, the game coming out this year, right after Vanguard, has to be a solid game, or else that could be detrimental to that future title down the line. If people continue to lose interest in Call of Duty with this next game, and there's no game immediately after, reportedly 2 years after this 2022 game, or potentially up to 2 years, that could just hamper the success of the franchise overall. If people aren't liking the second MW2, will they want to buy the 2024 title even if Treyarch has this additional time to develop it? So there's a lot of things to juggle here on both sides of the argument, but we're just going to have to see what happens and if more information is revealed leading up to the release of the game this year and potentially the release of the following COD, whenever that is.
Of course. This is honestly just kind of shocking that it actually happened, and it didn't happen under Microsoft, because I know that was a talking point that people had when Microsoft bought Activision, and that purchase is like the takeover hasn't even happened yet. So it's not related to that, at least reportedly. But for me, it was kind of shocking, just because even if, like, it's not that Activision didn't know that they were making bad games or like incomplete games, essentially. Like, they weren't, like, when they launched, they have all of these problems, and there's a lot of blowback from the community, the competitive and general gaming community, about like there's so many bugs, or it's just not the same, like there aren't a lot of good maps. So I think that surprised me, because it's not like they weren't aware of that stuff already. And I'm glad that it's happening, though. I'm not real sure about putting all of your eggs, per se, to put them in IW's basket to let them basically run COD for 2 years. I would definitely have preferred Treyarch to have that, because those games, even from like a viewer's perspective, seem a lot more enjoyable than, like, I played MW and I didn't really like it. And if this is like a continuation of that, of MW or something similar, we don't know, but I don't think that would be a whole lot of fun for players or viewers, to be honest.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm looking for this tweet. I thought it was from Charlie Intel, but I can't see it because I saw it right before I left to go get dinner. But
I have a
I
tweet here from Charlie Intel where it says Activision is working on other projects to fill the gap next year. A Call of Duty game set to come out this fall will receive a steady stream of additional content, and there will be a new free-to-play online title next year, said the people. Treyarch, the Activision-owned studio working on the now-delayed game, will also help with the free-to-play title, the people said. And then Charlie Intel followed up with that tweet, and they said, "This is not Warzone Mobile, from what I've heard," which was like the speculation that there would be a mobile Warzone title, like a free-to-play Warzone title. So it doesn't. Apparently, not a lot of people are super confident on like what that free-to-play game will be. But was that the tweet that you were referencing?
I was looking for one. I can't remember who it was from because I didn't see it on Charlie Intel, but I thought I saw somebody tweet that the Treyarch 2024, whatever you want to call it, the reported COD following this year's will be the first Call of Duty made exclusively for the current gen or the next gen platform, so PS5 and Xbox Series X S. But I can't find it, so I don't know if it was deleted or changed or if I'm just not remembering correctly. I thought that's what I saw. So that could be another interesting thing, too. I don't know how much of an impact that would have, given the situation where a lot of people right now are struggling still to find PS5s, and I don't know if Xbox One or not One, Xbox S and S, X and X are having the same issues, but I know PS5 is still a struggle to get for many people, so would be interesting to see what kind of impact that would have, or if the game is built exclusively for that next gen / current gen platform, if it's the graphics are any better or anything like that.
Just to get this in here, Activision's statement today was, quote, "We have an exciting slate of premium and free-to-play Call of Duty experiences for this year, next year, and beyond. Reports of anything otherwise are incorrect. We look forward to sharing more details when the time is right." So, I mean, obviously they're not going to show their hand when they don't really need to at this point. But I think Bloomberg has a really good, solid track record of reporting, and if Charlie Intel is also like corroborating it, I mean that to me is enough to believe a report. I mean, other people can believe what they want to, but I would believe that this is happening and that we won't see a new like a mainline Call of Duty title in 2023. But yeah, either way, this is a really exciting yet kind of scary time if you're a Call of Duty content creator or a Call of Duty player, because especially in the we don't really need to touch on the content creation aspect of it because we're not content creator. Well, I guess we are. We are creating content at the moment, but first and foremost, we cover the Call of Duty League and like Call of Duty esports as a whole, and it'll be really interesting to see how things change if the same game is played for 2 consecutive years, because we've never had that. Like, we have those off-season tournaments where people go back and they play Ghosts or they play Black Ops 3 or whatever, but for 2 consecutive years, what does that look like for the Call of Duty League and for challengers? Like, that just seems I can't actually imagine it right now.
Yeah, that would definitely be interesting, specifically from a competitive aspect. Another thing, not to get too speculative or anything like that, but just to use him as an example because he's somebody who's talked about retirement in recent years. But someone like Scump, who has said that he's going to continue playing until he doesn't have the passion for it, or if he doesn't enjoy the games anymore, stuff like that. There's a scenario where this upcoming MW sequel is a good game and he likes it, and if it's played for 2 years in the CDL somehow with the reported delay of the 2023 game, there's potential for Scump to continue his career. But on the flip side again, there's that chance that this MW sequel isn't a great game, or maybe he doesn't enjoy it as well as other pros, and we could see another exodus if there is just a group of long-standing pros who don't enjoy this particular game, and if it's going to be played for 2 years, then might be another batch of longtime veterans just leaving the scene. Obviously, that's all speculative right now, but this report does have major implications for the future of Call of Duty. Doesn't really need to be stated though.
Yeah. I'm sure we'll talk a lot about it as we get more details and we learn more about the situation and what the new game is really going to be like, because it could be completely different than the last IW game, which was Modern Warfare in 2019. I mean, this game is the current game Vanguard is, I mean, it looks pretty similar to MW, and I mean, it didn't sell well, apparently. And I mean, I know that Vanguard relatively or comparatively to the other Call of Duty titles did not sell as well as Cold War and Modern Warfare in 2019. So it's obvious that something is changing with Activision and their Call of Duty studios, but I guess we'll just kind of wait and see on what actually changes.
Yep.
But we have a lot of Call of Duty that we need to talk about on this episode. Let's get to it. We had 10 matches this past week in the Call of Duty League. These were the final 10 qualifying matches. Not really qualifying; it's a misnomer. It's a seeding match for the first major of the CDL season. The first match was Paris versus LAT. Nothing huge to talk about here because we expected LAT to win. They ended up winning 3-1. Paris, they did end up winning that search and destroy in the series, but not enough to take the series as a whole. So any thoughts on LAT's win here?
I think you said everything that really needs to be said here. This was I don't want to say a big win for LAT, but it was a good win to kick off the week for them. I believe this was Paris's last match, which means they fell to 0-5 following this. Um, Let me just, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure this was their last match. So with that win in Search and Destroy only in this series, they ended the first set of online matches with a 5-15 map count, which is the worst record and the least amount of map wins of any team in the CDL at this time. And arguably the most impressive part of that is 2 of their 5 map wins came against FaZe. So you can take that information for what it's worth or what you think it means. But end of the day, LA Thieves get the win here, and Paris falls to 0-5, last place in the current standings.
Yeah, not a huge surprise for us. We both thought that Paris would be one of the bottom 4 teams in the league, just based on like how much talent there was, and there wasn't a whole lot of hype coming from the Paris camp, even though people are saying that they were practicing a lot. So, I mean, unfortunate. Paris is winning champs is not looking good right now, but there's still a lot of time left in the season. Next match of the day, we had Minnesota versus Atlanta. Again, not a huge surprise. Minnesota, good team. It's not that Minnesota's bad or anything, but Atlanta's really good. We both predicted Atlanta to win, and they swept the Rocker 3-0. Any thoughts on this?
I do. Obviously, we both ended up picking Atlanta for this one, but I do remember. I feel like I said that like I wouldn't have been surprised if Minnesota like stole a map or two here or there, and although that wasn't the case in the end, they did force around 11, or it went 6-5 in the search. So that was pretty close, and as we've touched on a little bit with this Minnesota team, if you expect them to win some matches at this current point, it seems like it's going to be through their search and destroy. So that's just really the only main takeaway from Minnesota's perspective in this round. I guess, they almost won the search here, but in the end, it was a 3-0 for FaZe. I think the bigger thing for FaZe was that Simp had arguably his best series up to this point. Went 58 and 44 for a 1.32 KD, which is, as far as I know, it was his best series to date at this point, because he hadn't been putting up, those absurd Simp numbers that we've come to expect from early in his career. But even though Simp did have a 1.32, that wasn't even the highest KD on his team in the series, because Cell goes 51 and 33 for a 1.55. I think no, that's what couldn't have been the one he went. No, that was in the New York series. He went 10-1 in search. But yeah, Celium's been playing like a beast this year. So even though Simp put up some really good numbers, Cell still put up even better numbers.
Yeah, that's just the Atlanta special. They're just gonna. It doesn't really matter. One of them or 2 of them or maybe even 3 of them are gonna go off on a map, and it's kind of hard to stop them. The next match was the final match of Friday, but it was possibly the most talked about match of the weekend. Optic versus Toronto, and I believe I said on the podcast last week that this was the match I was most looking forward to, and I did not expect this to be the reason that I would be so interested in it, but Optic, they end up sweeping Toronto in a upset. We both thought Toronto would win. Cammy did end up playing for Toronto. We were kind of debating about whether he would actually play because he had missed the previous week due to illness, or one of the matches due to illness. But Optic's win was kind of overshadowed a little bit by Shotzi accidentally using a G8 item. I mean, you would know more about the F8 stabilizer thing than me, but just to give like a little background on it, like there are a lot of G8 or gentleman agreement items or guns that are technically not banned by the Call of Duty League, but players, they agree with one another to not use it to essentially like put everybody on a level playing field. Like it's either too overpowered or just, I mean, that's usually what it is. It's like it's too overpowered for the game. And one of these is the F8 stabilizer, and Shotzi accidentally used it in, did he use it in all three maps or just the first one?
As far as I know, he used it in the first two maps. After
Okay.
the break between maps 2 and 3, Rambo was able to talk to the team, and he let him know because obviously Rambo saw Twitter explode with all that stuff. So he saw, and I believe Shotzi took it off for map 3, and somebody on Toronto, I want to say it was Bands, but I'm not 100% sure. Somebody put F8 on Toronto for map 3 and ended up not mattering.
Yeah. So as the series was going on and as Optic and Toronto are playing the series, people on Twitter are losing their minds. Players and fans alike. You have Arcides say F8 on the sub, restart the map, and then Abizi, who, I mean, FaZe has been very defensive of Celium and snaking as a whole over like the past year or two, and like the drama around him allegedly snaking people during matches. But Abizi said, you got to think if that was Celium, people be rioting on the streets. And then, Slasher, he said, whatever it takes, which was what the CDL Twitter tweeted out after Optic won the series. Shotzi did apologize for using it, and he said that it was a mistake and that he wasn't trying to like break a GA or anything. It was just like an accident, which is, I think even Simp was defending him on Twitter, like as the game was going on. He was like, yeah, like it's probably a mistake. Like, why would he do it on purpose, But there were some people that were coming up with their own conspiracy theories that Optic was just trying to get an advantage so they wouldn't be in the losers bracket. But what did you think of this whole situation?
Yeah, I think you kind of touched on it a little bit before we got in depth on it more. At the end of the day, Optic still wins this series 3-0, and although it may have seemed like Shotzi was performing exceptionally well with this, G8 attachment on his MP40, whatever you want to say about that, it's still at the end of the day, Optic won, and I don't think that one attachment on the one gun is the only reason that Optic won. So you can say whatever you want about it. It's unfortunate. Obviously, in an ideal world, Shotzi, I believe he said like his classes got reset before the match, and he just like accidentally threw it on. So it doesn't seem like there was any malicious intent or anything like that. But at the end of the day, like I don't know. I feel like it takes away from the win from Optic. Then, as in an ideal situation, you want to just see none of this FA drama, even though it was definitely spicy for the timeline. You don't want to see this, and you just want to see Optic and Toronto go at it because they're two really good teams, and it would give us more of a better idea of where these teams are at this point in the season. If there wasn't this sticky situation with the F8 clouding the overall result.
Yeah, definitely. Even if it had no bearing on it, it's just a distraction that nobody really needed. I mean, it does look better for Toronto that they lost and that there is something else to talk about other than them losing. I'm not sure how much they actually care about that kind of stuff, but Optic definitely to get this kind of a win to sweep a team that is that was considered to be one of the best in the league, and like people are just talking about Shotzi. Like Shotzi's a great player, so it's not like he really needs a leg up on people. But it's unfortunate that it was a talking point, and yeah, it's just unfortunate, I guess.
Now, in a with the major on the horizon here, the only um, you know suitable answer, or the way we can conclude this, or come to a conclusion about who should have won this match, is if we see Optic versus Toronto at the major on land. That would definitely be a spicy one, assuming there is no further GA drama involved in that match if it were to happen. If we see Optic versus Toronto, I believe they're on opposite sides of the bracket, which obviously we'll touch on later in the show and more in depth next week. But if we were to see that matchup on land, this unfortunate situation with the GA drama for the online match could create even more excitement for a match between two top teams, and a matchup that was, as far as I remember, heavily dominated by Toronto last season.
Yeah, it would be a really good matchup to see on land. We had 4 matches on Saturday. Like a lot of these matches actually mattered a lot for the seeding because there was a gigantic logjam in the middle of the standings where like everybody was tied with each other or like one game behind. And because this is a new format, we didn't have this format last year with like these predetermined matchups going into each week. There was a lot of talk about tiebreakers and like what would be the tiebreakers if there's a 5-way tie for like 4th place or whatever. So fortunately, we didn't have like all of the issues that ended up like all of the issues did not end up being actual issues at the end of the day. But we had these 4 matches on Saturday, the first of which Seattle versus Florida. We both picked Seattle, probably not thinking a lot of it, and Florida ends up winning 3-0. There was some drama. I don't know how much. People were actually praising the CDL for their handling of it, but Vivid, he disconnected in the first map, and they lost that map. And people were like, "Oh my God! If the CDL doesn't end up replaying this map, it's like a travesty." And then the CDL was like, "All right, we'll replay the map." And Florida actually wins the replay, and then they end up sweeping the series, which is a huge surprise considering how strong Seattle had looked coming into this week. What did you think of this Florida Seattle series?
Yeah. I didn't hear everything you just said because the stream crashed and I thought I lagged out. So if I dropped out of the call, I might lose internet, which would be unfortunate, but we'll have to roll with it. Aside from that, though, yeah, this matchup had that little replay from map 1. After that, Florida just kind of unexpectedly takes the rest of the series. Don't know if that was like a tilter for Seattle or what, but I think the big picture here is that this was I don't want to say eye-opening because I don't necessarily feel that way about it, but it was kind of just like a head-scratching moment for Seattle, looking like one of the top teams through the early matchups in the Kickoff Classic and the first 2 weeks of online qualifiers, to having some struggles in this last week leading up to the major. It has some people in the community questioning exactly what's going on with Seattle. You know, are they one of those top teams that some people considered them previously, or what's going on there? I guess we're gonna just have to wait, see what happens at the major to give our final verdict on that. But it's definitely just not an ideal situation if you're a Seattle fan, to have your team that started out so hot struggle this week, and have it be that last week going into the major. If they like struggled in week 1 or week 2, they had some more matches to figure stuff out leading up to the major, but that's not the case now. They just have their scrims and practice, and they're gonna have to go back to the drawing board, see what they can come up with to try and prepare as best as possible for the major. So that's end of the day. That's the big picture takeaway here. Is maybe myself and maybe some other people might not be as high on Seattle following their performance in this week.
Yeah, I think So Toronto and Seattle, we'll get to both Toronto and Seattle's like second matches of the week, but they both went 0-2 on the week, and they both appeared to be like top four teams going into this final week. I think, and I'm just gonna give them an excuse here that they could use if they want to. This is online, and Seattle played Florida, which is probably the biggest like difference in online. Like literally, the Surge are in Seattle, if I'm not mistaken. So
Yes.
like the northwest of the country versus the southeast of the country, like who knows? They're battling on like 60 ping probably. Toronto, they lost to Optic, which is not a huge, it's not as big of a change, but I mean, it's still Toronto versus Dallas. Toronto versus LA Thieves. It's Toronto versus LA. That's quite a bit of area. And then London versus Seattle. They're not playing against London, but they're playing like I think in North Carolina. So Seattle, North Carolina, across the country. So I'll give them an excuse that is on the table if they want to take it. I don't personally put like a ton of uh, you know, a ton of weight into online like excuses just because everybody's kind of got to deal with the hand that they're dealt, and you always have the ability to prove that you're a better team on land. So maybe they'll prove it at the major, both Seattle and Toronto, but I think we'll just have to wait and see for
Yeah.
that.
On that note too, not to say that online is or isn't a factor, but Sib in particular went 47 and 69 in the series, which is a .68, and Sib had been looking like an MVP caliber player very early. Obviously, he's a rookie, but he had been playing lights out and dropping just absurd numbers earlier in the season. So that plus there was the disconnect map one, which obviously could have been like a server or it could have been an individual issue for just Vivid, but it also could have been something with the server or the connection overall of the match. So, um, I agree. It is potentially an excuse. Obviously, we don't want to make an excuse for them that we don't have to, but um, it's just we're gonna have to see how they respond going into the major.
Yeah. Next match, we had New York versus Boston, which in traditional sports is a huge rivalry. It's not a rivalry in Call of Duty yet, but this was really an interesting matchup as we were talking last week because New York, they needed more practice with Royalty. That was definitely something that needed to happen because there wasn't a whole lot of time between Neptune's benching and Royalty coming into the fold. But New York, they're able to pull off an upset regardless against Boston here. I I mean, I picked New York, but I wasn't super confident on it because, like I said, like the Royalty stuff is concerning just because they don't have a lot of practice. And I mean, I really haven't seen Royalty play a whole lot since like World War II, so I don't really know a ton about him in the current meta. But New York, they're able to pull off this win. What did you take away from New York beating Boston?
Yeah, I was surprised just like you. I went with Boston here, thinking, the roster change with New York. Boston has been a really good team in scrims leading up to this season. So that, plus me having more practice with their actual roster, I thought Boston would take this one. But in the end, Boston wins both hard points and New York wins both searches. As that age-old adage, as we always say, search wins championships, or in this case, the search wins online qualifier matches.
Yeah. Let's go to the next match. We had a pretty interesting one, Minnesota versus LAG. Minnesota, they were coming off of a 3-0 loss to Atlanta. This was LAG's first and I believe only match of the week coming in. So I picked LAG, you picked Minnesota, and this was a really tight series. They go down to the wire. They get to game 5, and Minnesota ends up clutching up. But like probably the talk of this series is the very first map. We have a 250 to 241 Bokage hardpoint, And I mean, I've said it on the podcast before. I'm a big fan of Bokage. I love the small maps and tons of engagement. Gunless, he led the way 42 and 26 on the map. Hook had 37 kills, and Major Maniac had the most kills on the Rocker with 35. What did you think of this map and the series as a whole?
Yeah, I think this was one we talked about a little bit more in depth than some people might have expected, uh, based on the other matches on the schedule. But it was one match that I felt like I could have saw go either way, and I kind of broke down the scenarios where I said like if it goes Game 5, I was leaning towards Minnesota just because of that search. But I felt that if it was in a scenario where it was 2-1 LAG going into that Game 4 hardpoint, I could see LAG taking the 3-1 win, most likely due to uh, their, you know, their ability to win respawns. But that was probably the biggest shock of this series was that Minnesota gets the win by taking that Game 4 on Berlin hardpoint. So they win both searches and the Game 4 to take the 3-2 victory.
Next match we had Toronto versus LAT. I touched on it about Toronto losing. We both picked Toronto. I mean, it's not that LAT is bad because I think they have the ability to be really good, but I guess we both expected more out of Toronto. They end up losing 3-1. Any thoughts on LAT with a little upset here?
Yeah, I mean, you can look at it either way too. I think this is an upset in my eyes, because they played at the Kickoff Classic, I believe, and that's when obviously Toronto won because they won the whole thing. So I'm pretty sure they played in the Kickoff Classic. So we've seen this match already this year, and in this matchup, Toronto comes out and dominates map one hardpoint, but then the rest of the series is controlled by LAT from there. So it was, it was 6-4 in the search, 3-2 control. We've seen a lot of 3-2s in control. And then 250 to 215 in the Game 4 hard points. So it was close maps after map one, but end of the day, LATs do walk away with the victory. They improved to 4-1, which, um, you know, they're tied for second.
Yeah.
So that might be a little higher than some people expected. But like you said, there are other people who expected this team to be a championship contender right away. So, um, it will just be interesting to see how they perform on LAN and if they're able to take advantage of this high seeding that they earned through these online matches.
Yeah, so they are 4-1. They're tied for second. Who are they tied with? The London Royal Ravens. The team, I don't believe we have picked them in any single match. They went 4-1. They beat Seattle on the final day of the qualifiers. They win 3-1. So we were like 1-4 in these predictions for London, even though we both have winning records in our predictions, like in total, which is pretty crazy. I mean, this is the result between Seattle and London is surprising. Two reasons. Like London, they just keep surprising people. They keep winning no matter how much we think they're going to lose. And Seattle, like you said earlier, this was a really bad week for them. Like to come into the final week and then to only win like one or two maps. Where was the first series? Yeah, so they won one map total. I guess you two
You
if
say
they didn't.
1.5,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So they probably it wasn't a good week no matter how you split it. So what do you think of London beating Seattle here?
Yeah, this was definitely one I was not expecting. Like you said, we continue to pick against London, and so far they've proved us wrong 80% of the time, at least in the regular season. But this was one of the first matchups we saw in the CDL in Vanguard at the Kickoff Classic, and I'm pretty sure London got 3-0'd by Seattle at the Kickoff Classic,
Yeah,
if
they
I'm
did.
remembering correctly. And that was kind of like one of the situations where it started talking about not it, the community started talking about just like what's going to happen with London, like, what should we expect from this team? We haven't really heard a lot about their practice or anything like that. so it kind of like, I don't want to say lowered expectations, but it set the bar low, I'll say, for London heading into the regular season, and now they've just shattered that, and like you said, 4-1 now, sitting towards the top of the standings, for a squad with two official rookies, one second-year player, and zero. For a squad like that, kudos to them. They keep proving us wrong and other people wrong. So, and kind of touched on it last weekend, I believe, but just Gizmo continues to impress early on, and he was the player we knew the least about on London heading into this season. So, I'm gonna have my eyes on him, especially heading into this land situation. Since we only saw them play that one series against Seattle at the Kickoff Classic on land, we haven't seen them play on land much aside from that, and these matches were obviously online, so they're gonna have to try and come out and prove doubters wrong once again and say, we won these online matches, we can do it on land too.
Yeah, Gizmo, he might, like, I mean, obviously there is no Rookie of the Year award, whatever, but in like the eyes of the community, we were talking about Pred and Sib from Seattle, and Gizmo and Nasty, like they both look really good as rookies. I guess Nasty was on a CDL roster, but he didn't play, but whatever. Like I just think that's really impressive that like this isn't a team that people were hyping up really. This like a middle of the road team, maybe even to the bottom of the standings. Like the coaches didn't think very highly of them, and they've been really really good. And Gizmo in particular has been really good. So yeah, kudos to them. And then we had the last two matches. Nothing real surprising here on either match. Boston versus Optic. We both picked Optic, and Optic did end up winning 3-1. And Atlanta and New York, we, as usual, we picked Atlanta, and they won 3-1 as well. I guess, like, let's go to the Optic Boston series first. Like, Optic kind of salvaging what started out as a pretty poor start. They like lost their first two matches, and then they win the final three. What did you think of their win and kind of resurgence in the back half of the qualifiers?
Yeah, I think this was a necessary win for Optic beyond the F8 drama, GA drama, however you want to word it. Obviously, they didn't have to deal with that in this match. And although Toronto and Boston might not be on teams of the same caliber on paper or in some people's minds, I touched on it before in the last episode that Boston was playing well in scrims against Optic leading up to the season, and that kind of like put me in a situation where I was kind of thinking about potentially picking Boston to steal this series, cause an upset, but didn't end up doing it. And Optic just come away with the win here. It was the game one. Her point was 250 to 247, and I believe the broadcast put up a stat before this match started and said that Optic was 7-0 in maps where Illy had a positive KD, and I'm pretty sure they went to 7-1 after that hard point because I think Illy was like frying in the Gavutu hard point, and then they ended up losing by 3 points. But after that, we get the Optic 6-5 win. They able to win around 11, which is a good sign for Optic that we saw in the first week of the qualifiers. Struggled in round 11. And then they win a 3-0 control on Gavutu control, which is something I don't think we've seen this year. I think I saw FaZe like win a Tuscan 3-0 control. But to see a Gavutu 3-0 control was kind of surprising to me, just because of how defensively favored that map is. And then they close it out in a hard point. So like you said, a good bounce back week for Optic aside from the GA drama, and a good response for them leading up to the major, their own major, in fact.
And the last match, Atlanta, they beat New York. Not a lot to say about Atlanta, but New York, they finished the qualifiers 0-9 in hardpoint, which I just looked it up. Hardpoint was their best game mode in Cold War as a team. They won 54% of their hard points, which was the highest win percentage of any of their game modes. So 0-9 in hardpoint. Obviously, things have not gone well for them. Like even if they won a few, they had to make a roster change in the first stage or in the first section of the season. Uh, is there something that like what do you think is wrong with New York, or is this something that can be fixed with just practice with royalty and like getting him integrated into the team?
I think that's the biggest thing is obviously something is going wrong for them to be 0-9 uh, in one of the most important. I mean, obviously, there's only three modes, and you play two of them twice. So hardpoint and search are both important. All the modes are important. But because hardpoint is that first map in a lot of series, and it's the main respawn mode, it's inarguably an important mode. And for them to be 0-9 in it, it obviously means they have stuff to work on, and they got to improve something. I don't know if it could be like a pacing issue with Crim and Clay versus the subs, or what's going on exactly. Maybe like I just remember when Hydra first joined the league last year, like they were absurd at hardpoint, and maybe it was just like a Hydra effect. Like he was absolutely frying, and that was helping them win. Not to say that he's not frying, because we didn't even touch on it, I don't think, but it was in that Boston series where Hydra dropped 116 kills and 17 in map 5. So he's playing, still pretty well. I don't know his exact numbers right now, but um, he has been, the face of New York essentially from a stats perspective, and he didn't have the best series here against FaZe with a .85, but again, end of the day, New York's obviously got stuff going on behind the scenes and stuff they have to improve on, and they're going to be in the losers bracket to start this major. So if they want to make something happen, they're going to have to put their heads down, grind leading up to this event, and try to pull off a miraculous lower bracket run with that leadership of Clay and Krem. If any team is going to be able to pull off something crazy like that in the lower bracket, it might be New York. But end of the day, I think like after making a mid-stage or mid-qualifiers roster change, I don't know if they like as a team are expecting to go into the event and win it. It might just be more of like a practice opportunity, try and get some more reps in, and look forward to the you know upcoming matches in the following major.
Speaking of the first major, let's bring up the bracket right now. We have 8 teams starting in the winners bracket or the upper bracket. So I'll just read out the matchups in the upper bracket real quick. To start, we have Atlanta FaZe versus the Boston Breach, and then Optic Texas versus the Seattle Surge, the London Royal Ravens versus the Los Angeles Guerrillas, and then the Los Angeles Thieves versus the Toronto Ultra. So the winner of FaZe and Breach will play the winner of Optic and Surge, and the winner of the Royal Ravens and Gorillas will play the winners of Thieves and Ultra. And in the losers bracket, we have the bottom 4 teams. We have the Florida Mutineers, the Paris Legion, the Minnesota Rocker, and the New York Subliners. Now that you're looking at the bracket, Bink, what are some of the biggest surprises for you from like the first set of qualifier matches? Like what surprises you?
I don't know if anything necessarily surprises me. I don't want to well, obviously the New York in the lower bracket definitely surprises me, but based on everything that's happened, makes sense in that regard. But if you showed me this image before the season started and showed me New York down there, I would have been kind of confused. But other than that, we're going to touch on this bracket in our preview show next week more in depth. But just looking at it immediately, give you guys some little tidbits here. We are seeing a rematch of the LA Thieves Ultra match that we just saw this past weekend. That should be a good one in the winners bracket. We're also seeing London versus the Gorillas, which the Gorillas are the only team that have beaten London in these online matchups leading up to this major. So London will be looking to get some revenge. LAG trying to prove that wasn't a fluke. Could be an interesting matchup there. And then with Optic and Surge, that's going to be one where if Surge was on their trajectory before this past weekend, this is a match that a lot of people are looking forward to, as two like heavy slaying teams, and a lot of expectations on both of them. Now it becomes a question of what Seattle is going to show up, what Optic is going to show up, and obviously with the green wall behind Optic in person, this could be it should be an exciting match either way. But we're just gonna have to see which version of both teams shows up, and I'm hoping for a good one there as well.
If Optic did end up beating the Surge, and Atlanta, of course, beating Boston, we would get Optic versus FaZe in the second round. So the winners semifinals, which would be incredible, especially in front of an audience on LAN. We also could see LAG versus LAT in the second round, depending on how things go. Like it shocks me to see it in the bracket that the subliners are at the very bottom and that they have to play the loser of the Thieves versus Ultra, which seems like cruel and unusual to do that to them. But same with Paris, they got to play the loser of Optic and the Surge. So it's really not going to be a fun time no matter how you split it when you're in the losers bracket, and you got to win like half a dozen matches to even get to the grand finals. So best of luck to the teams. We will be talking about this because we have this week off from matches, and the teams don't actually start the major until the following week. We're going to actually hold off on previewing this major until next week's episode, where we'll go in depth on it, give our entire bracket predictions, and try to get as many as we can right. Maybe we'll actually pick London next week or in the major. That would be a change that we could probably make to our predictions.
For yourself.
Well, I mean, they are playing LAG, so maybe I need to pick against them. I don't know. Anything else? Let's talk about some MP40 stuff before we get out of here, because you did end up writing this article, and I edited your article for .esports.com, the best esports coverage online. You can go check it out. Bink wrote an article about the Mp40 being nerfed in the latest Call of Duty Vanguard update. I mean, this is obviously a cause for concern, or a possible cause for concern, I should say, for competitive players, because the Mp40 is so powerful and so popular among competitive players. What do you think about this update? Has there been any more information that's come out about what exactly is being nerfed with the Mp40?
Yeah, so the patch notes that were released for today's update, first off, it was like an in-game update, not a downloadable update, so it was a minor update to begin with. And the nerf appears on paper to be minor as well to the Mp40. So in the patch notes, all the patch notes actually say was that the damage range was decreased on the Mp40, or did I say damage range? I don't even remember what I just said. That was 5 seconds ago. So yeah, that's all it says is the balance adjustment Mp40 decreased damage range. So at first we didn't really know how much of an impact this was going to have on the Mp40, whether it was going to be a major or minor nerf. Before I wrote that article, I went into just a bot lobby real quick, and I shot like 50, 60 bots just to try and test it out. I tried to take a little bit of longer gunfights to see if I felt a difference or anything like that, and I really didn't immediately notice anything. And again, small sample size there. But then Exclusive Ace did a video. I didn't watch the video, but Crone tweeted it from CDL Intel. That the actual, like, the numbers behind it is that for the Mp40's 3-shot kill range, it was decreased from 15 meters to 12.7 meters, and the 4-shot kill range was decreased from 28 to 24 meters. So you can take those numbers for what they are. I'm gonna be playing some more COD later tonight, so I might have a better idea of just how drastic or non-drastic this change actually is. But in my opinion, if this is only something that's affecting those more long-range gunfights for the Mp40, that's a good thing, because as a submachine gun, you shouldn't be able to, fry someone across the map with an MP40, but the MP40 is just there. It was just so good, and it still is really good. So if that's what this nerf is targeting, to try and like just decrease that range at how far you can, map people or anything like that, I think that'd be a good thing, because with an MP40 you're supposed to be getting those kills up close. You shouldn't be like on a heady shooting people across the map like you would with an AR. That's what, you want to do that, pull out the automaton. So yeah, we're gonna have to see what's going on, but I think the bigger question here is, one, we still, even though we have these numbers here from exclusive Ace, we don't know how, what the impact of this damage range decrease will be from a competitive standpoint. And more importantly, we don't even know like exactly what patch or version of Vanguard will be played at the major. If I had to guess, they've most likely just been using, whatever they've been using for these online matches, which obviously this update wouldn't have been available for the online matches. So I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't use this until the following online qualifiers for the Stage 2 major. But that's also me just guessing and not knowing 100%. So we'll have to see what happens here, and if we get some more information from the pros and stuff leading up to the major about the MP40 or anything like that.
We're closing in on an hour. Like I said earlier, we didn't really have a lot planned for the show heading into yesterday and today, but a lot of stuff happened. We got to talk about this report that Call of Duty's 2023 title will actually not be taking place, and it'll be in 2024. We've got to talk about the Mp40 nerf, like Bink just told you. I can't give you a lot of details about Mp40 and like the benefits and the cons and benefits of everything there, but do you want to talk about these online KDs before we go, or do you want to wait for next week?
I just wanted to bring up the overall KDs, but I think I messed up the link because it looks like I have the S&D ones linked twice. So now I got to scroll. We don't have to go in depth, but as you guys know, all the stats that we use on the podcast are provided by Breaking Point. So if you guys don't follow them on Twitter, anything like that, go check them out. They provide some great stats and content for competitive Call of Duty. But I'm going to keep scrolling here, and here it is, the overall KD for all of Stage 1, which, that's not technically what they're calling it, as far as I know. I'm pretty sure the stages were last year, and this is just like its own thing.
Yeah.
Like the Major 1 qualifiers, like, again, even though they aren't qualifiers, they're more seeding matches, regardless. Yeah. We have the for overall KD, Celium is leading the league right now with a 1.29. Gizmo has a 1.20, which pretty impressive for a rookie like that. There you go. They're on screen for those of you watching in video form. Afro is sitting in third with a 1.15. Shotzi a 1.13. Abizi and Awakening in fifth, sixth with a 1.1. Gunless and Dave Patty. Dave Patty's an interesting one there because, again, a rookie. They both have a 1.09. Then Dashy at 108 and Temp at a 105. Temp is another kind of surprising name for this top 10 here, just considering how poor Paris have been playing so far early in the year. So there you go. Those are just the overall KD leaders so far early in the season. Obviously, only 5-match sample size, so things could change. But right now, Atlanta FaZe 5-0. Simp leading the league in overall KD. He's also leading it in S&D KD. I said we weren't going to go into this, but pretty sure Breaking Point put Celium's S&D KD for these online qualifiers at a 2.68. Which is just kind of absolutely absurd. So if I had to pick an MVP right now for the season, before we even seen an actual official LAN event, I'd be giving that to Celium, but we got a lot of Call of Duty to play still in 2022. So just wanted to bring those stats up.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious that they're 5-0, and a lot of that has to do with just how dominant Celium and Abizi has also been incredible, and Simp he's shown like in certain matches how good he really is. But that team's incredible, and Celium in particular is pretty insane. But yeah, that is the overall KDs. We'll probably get into them more after the major to kind of see how players perform on LAN and if there's any difference between the stats when online and when on LAN. Like we said before, we're going to give you an entire preview of the first CDL major next week on next week's episode. So that will actually be the 1st of March. We're going to schedule that for March 1st at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. That's next Tuesday if you want to join us for the live version. And as always, the podcast is uploaded the following, it's really like at midnight the following day now. So, yeah, if you want to check us out on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, we're on YouTube. You can watch the podcast video feed on Spotify as well now. Make sure to give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcast. Give us a review. Follow us on Twitter. He's at jbink with 2Ks. I'm at Preston Byers, and the podcast Twitter is at Ego Chall Podcast. Like I said, we're aiming for the next show to be Tuesday, March 1st at 8 p.m. If there's any changes to that, if we delay it or whatever we do, just make sure to follow us on Twitter. We'll give you updates on what's happening. Yeah, also go to .esports.com. Bink wrote an article. It was a really good article. I didn't have to do a whole lot. So, yeah, go to .esports.com. Check out all of our esports and general gaming coverage and streaming coverage. So we have a lot there for you to enjoy. That's all for me. Bink, take it away.
Yep. As always, thank you guys for watching. Hope you've enjoyed our recap. Obviously, it's been, feels like it was a long off season. Now we finally got in some consecutive weeks with online play, and we're almost finally there to that first official LAN major tournament of Vanguard. So hope you've enjoyed what we've provided so far. As always, you guys got any feedback or anything like that, let us know. And looking forward to our show next week where we'll go a little bit more in depth and give our predictions, stuff like that for the major. And, as it goes with, in my opinion at least, bracket predictions are much harder than just single match predictions because, like, you pick the first round matchup wrong in a bracket, that just messes everything else up.
We've done it many times.
Yep. So, you guys want to tune in to see our bracket predictions next week, you can do that. And then the following week, you can come back and laugh and see how wrong we ended up being. Or potentially if one of us has a perfect bracket, who knows? Going to have to watch to find out. So thank you guys as always. And remember to send the chow.